Well, I mean, I suppose the big thing about the budget is there's going to be two different budgets. There's going to be the standard budget that they have every year when they say we have X amount of money to spend and we're going to spend it on hospitals, we're going to spend it on education, we're going to spend it on infrastructure and all of the rest. And then there's going to be a different budget this year that's never really been rolled out before. And that's to deal with, Kamal, as you're saying, the cost of living crisis. Because the cost of living crisis is the all-consuming story around at the moment, you know. And they have a certain amount of money to deal with the everyday expenses, you know, maybe cuts and taxes that will be enduring. And then they have a multi-billion euro budget that are for what is going to be called one-off measures. Now, one-off is going to be one of the big phrases of next week, because what the government doesn't want to do is it doesn't want to tie itself into doing things that it's going to have to do every year forever. So what it's going to say is it's going to say, OK, here's a series of one-off measures that are going to offset some of the worst impacts of the cost of living crisis. And that's the long-winded answer to saying, so some of those measures will be aimed at businesses, but the vast majority of them will be aimed at individual consumers.
Yeah. So what individual one-off reliefs are we going to get?
The big one will be on energy. So what they're going to do is, as we've talked about on the show before, when earlier this year they had this €200 credit for all electricity or all utility all energy bills. So there's going to be more of that. Now there's probably going to be 3 different credits applied to people's domestic energy bills over the winter months. That'll amount to €600. Now, €600 sounds like great news, but when you think that energy bills will have gone up by €2,000, it's like, well, we're still going to be much worse off. So that's one big step. There's also going to be tweaks to the tax bands, so that the rate at which people start paying the higher tax rate will go up to close to €40,000. And all told, the tax measures could be worth around 500 quid to somebody who's earning €45,000. Yeah. Now, it'll be worth less to people who are earning less, and it might be worth a bit more to people who are earning a bit more than that. But roughly speaking, so people will be paying less tax, maybe by around €500. And then for people who are on social welfare, there was all this talk of increasing social welfare payments by €15 a week. And then all these people saying, oh, that's too much. And you're going, really? Yeah. Like, that's too much? But so it's more likely that the social welfare payments will go up by €10 a week. Now, again, it's not going to offset all of the impacts of the cost of living crisis, but I suppose it's better than nothing. And then you'll see the children's allowance and the old age pensions and will increase. There's also going to be extra welfare payments made in the run-up to Christmas. And one of the things that hasn't been confirmed yet, but one of the big things is they're going to maybe have a double children's allowance payment for people in the run-up to Christmas, which of course will be really welcome. And you know, obviously the more children you have, the more you'll benefit from that. But the bottom line is that this will be a budget that the government is going to do everything it can to try and give money back to people. So, you know, but they're kind of stuck, because no matter how much they give back, it won't be enough to offset the spiralling rates of inflation, rates that we haven't seen since the early 1980s.
What can we expect in terms of fuel allowance, Conor?
Well, the fuel allowance, there's 2 things that are going to happen to the fuel allowance. Earlier this year, the government cut the excise duty on motor fuel by 20 cents. Now, that's kept the price of diesel and petrol, for the most part, under €2 in recent months. That's probably going to be extended, because it was a short-term measure. It's probably going to be extended for the next, well into the new year. There's also going to be the fuel allowance is going to go up for people who are in receipt of the fuel allowance for domestic energy to heat their homes. That'll go up by €5, roughly, which is what people are anticipating. And again, you know, €5 a week isn't going to buy a lot of briquettes, but it's at least something. And I think that's...
Well, we're not allowed to buy briquettes anymore, isn't that right?
Well,
that's another thing.
That's a whole different story. Yeah. You can probably still buy them, but, you know. So that's good. So that's going to be another measure. And there's all sorts of other things that are happening. And, like, if you read the estimates that people are making ahead of the budget, as I say, it might be... people, like, you know, might be paying maybe €900, €1,000 less in taxes than they were at this time last year. So our taxes and benefits.
And what about tax relief for renters then?
Well, this is like up till 2017. People who were renting homes could get a tax relief that was worth around €1,400 a year. Now, in their infinite wisdom, the government decided to get rid of that, because they decided, you know what, renters don't need any help anymore, which is, of course, absolute nonsense, because renters do need help, and they needed help in 2017. So they scrapped that tax relief in 2017. It seems inevitable now that they will have to reintroduce some class of tax relief for renters, and probably what's going to be more controversial is whatever tax reliefs they give to landlords. Because it's clear that renters in Ireland are in a terrible bind, because the cost of renting a home in Dublin or in an urban centre or anywhere around the country is absolutely astronomical. And the amount of properties so people are struggling to afford that. But another difficulty is that there aren't that many properties available for rent. So the government is going to say, OK, we're going to give the renters a few bob here, and then we're going to give landlords a few bob there, and that might encourage more landlords to stay in the sector. But of course, you know, sometimes landlord is a dirty word, and people don't like to be sporting landlords, but that's probably what's going to happen.
Before we let you go, there was talk earlier today about the hospital inpatient charges being abolished for children. So this is going to happen fairly sharpish as well, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. It's going to happen very, very soon, and it's very welcome, because there is this charge imposed of €80 a night if you're staying in hospital for children under the age of 16, and it's an absolutely scandalous charge, because it genuinely impacts the people who can afford to pay it the least. Because you don't pay the €80 if you've got private health insurance, and you know, so it's the people who can't afford private health insurance and the people who aren't on the medical card, those kind of people in the middle, who have to pay this charge.
And a parent might go, do you know what, she'd be grand, we'll just, you know what I mean? Like, it might actually affect the care and how the patient progresses.
Listen, it's like the free GP care for the under sixes, the free GP care for all children. I think these are the kinds of measures that are absolutely essential, because I mean, like, we just look across the water at the amazing public health system that exists in the UK, in the NHS. Now, the British are always giving out about the NHS, but it's a damn sight better than the systems that we have in here, that we have in this country, and this is another step in that direction.